Good afternoon. Nice crowd. I know everybody's excited about Energy Week. We certainly are here at the White House. That's why we've got Secretary of Energy Rick Perry here to talk to you about what the President and others in the administration are doing all this week to emphasize our commitment to American energy dominance. And he'll take some of your questions after that. And of course, I will be happy to step back up after that and answer questions on other non-energy related topics. And be nice to him. He's from Texas, not quite Arkansas, but still a good neighbor. So
a good neighbor.
Thanks.
Sarah, thank you. And my privilege to be here today to share with you a little bit of the observation that I have relative to Energy Week. This week, the Trump administration will bring together state, tribal, business, labor, all together, one room, happily sitting down and discussing how we're going to go forward, what the path forward is for U.S. energy dominance. And President Trump wants America to achieve energy dominance by utilizing our abundant resources for good, both here and abroad. I think an energy dominant America means self-reliant, means a secure nation, free from the geopolitical turmoil of other nations who seek to use energy as an economic weapon. An energy dominant America will export to markets around the world, increasing our global leadership and our influence. At DOE and across the administration, we're ending the bureaucratic blockade that has hindered American energy creation. You know, the United States has been a net energy exporter, a net energy importer since 1953, almost as long as I've been alive. But thanks to innovation, technology advancements, we're on the brink of changing this, and in very important elements of an American energy portfolio. 10 years ago, people would never have guessed that by 2018, the United States is expected to be a net energy exporter of natural gas. American companies can and already have exported U.S. LNG to our international trading partners in Europe and Asia. Unleashing our full energy potential in this country will lead to robust job growth and expansion in every sector of our economy. This week, we will also reaffirm our commitment to clean energy. That binary choice between pro-economy and pro-environment that has perpetuated, or I should say been perpetuated by the Obama administration, has set up a false argument. The fact is we can do good for both, and we will. There was one fact missing from the headlines about the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. That is, the United States already leads the world in lowering emissions. We've done this through innovation and technology, not by signing agreements. The Paris Agreement put the taxpayer on the hook for a costly deal. There was $1 billion already out the door. Thankfully, this president has the good sense to step in before billions more had been committed. We've already seen the fruits of innovative, clean technology like CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, sequestration. That Petronova plant just on the outskirts of Houston, Texas, uses a process to remove 90% of the carbon dioxide after coal is burned to generate energy in a clean way. Then it uses that captured carbon for enhanced oil recovery. Instead of preaching about clean energy, this administration will act on it. I believe no clean energy portfolio is truly complete without nuclear power, and so does the president. If you want to see the environment and the climate that we live in affected in a positive way, you must include nuclear energy with its zero emissions in your portfolio. Do it safe, do it thoughtfully, do it economically. Under the leadership of the United States, the world can benefit from that. This administration believes that nuclear energy development can be a game changer and an important player in the development of our clean energy portfolio globally. I believe we can achieve this by focusing on the development of technology, for instance, advanced nuclear reactors, small modular reactors. Under President Trump's leadership, we will continue to advocate for a very broad, all-of-the-above energy portfolio to allow the United States to achieve energy independence, dramatically reducing our trade deficits and create jobs beyond the 6.4 million Americans who are currently employed in that sector. We look forward to hearing from Americans this week about how we can best move forward to reduce unnecessary government regulation and bureaucracy to promote jobs and economic growth in the energy sector. For years, they have been overregulated by Washington politicians and bureaucrats who believed they knew best. The lecturing is over with, and now it's time that we listen. With that, I will attempt to answer your questions.
On nuclear power, what specifically do you want to do to accelerate its development? And as has been seen in Georgia, there are still problems. The Obama administration greenlighted 2 plants. They're bogged down, primarily because a lot of American companies haven't built a nuclear power plant in 3 decades. There's a technology gap there. So how do you deal with that, number one? And number two, if this administration does advance the production of nuclear power, does it believe Yucca Mountain needs to be opened up, or that needs to be reconsidered as a repository for nuclear waste?
Well, it's very, I think, a very astute question you ask about the issue. For 30 years, the supply chain basically was stagnant. It was allowed to atrophy, if you will. This administration truly believes in an all-of-the-above approach, allowing nuclear energy to come and play an important role in a very diverse portfolio. So the idea that over-regulating and industry, that is one of the challenges. And it's not just about the United States from the standpoint of our being able to have an energy source that is reliable, that is zero emission. It's about America maintaining or regaining, maybe a better word, our leadership role in nuclear energy, because the Russians and the Chinese are very actively engaged in across the board globally to go put their technology to gain and leverage their political place, if you will, using nuclear energy as one of the levers. So this is a lot bigger issue than just allowing the United States a couple of plants in the southern part of the United States. It's a lot bigger than that. It's a lot bigger than just making sure that Westinghouse continues to be a stable American company. This is a massively important issue for the security of America and the security for America's allies. So keeping that in place, I think it's important for us to look at the options, clearly having a plan to keep America engaged in the development of nuclear energy. One of the things we want to do at DOE is to make nuclear energy cool again, from the standpoint of, you remember when we were kids. Well, sorry, you're nowhere near my age, but when I was younger in the 60s, and a lot of kids wanted to go into the nuclear energy field. In my alma mater, there were a lot of young boys and girls who wanted to be nuclear energy engineers. That's not so much the case today, because this industry has been strangled all too often by government regulations. But we need, as a country, I think, to again bring us to that place where the nuclear energy is a part of a portfolio, and to be able to sell it in great truthfulness and honesty about what it can add to America, both from an environmental standpoint and from a security standpoint.
What about Yucca Mountain? What about Yucca Mountain? What about Yucca Mountain?
Well, you know, we've made no decisions at DOE, nor has this administration, from the standpoint of where we're going to look. Obviously, those are all options, but there's been no decision made about where we'll be going. Yes, sir.
Secretary, two questions for you. You mentioned the Paris.
Why do you all get two questions?
Oh, we like to
kind
get
of
as
the
much as
game
we
we
can.
played out.
You mentioned
two, the rest of us get three.
You mentioned the Paris Agreement. Do you believe, sir, that climate change is happening and that human activity has made it worse?
Here's what I believe, and I'm pretty much on the record, but I love getting the opportunity to talk about it again, is the climate is changing. Man is having an impact on it. I've said that time after time. The idea that we can't have an intellectual conversation about just what are the actual impacts. I mean, as late as this last week, an undersecretary for the Obama administration, Steve Coons, he believes that we need to have a sit down and have a conversation, that the data is not, from his perspective, and obviously he was a good enough scientist to be asked by the Obama administration to come in to be an undersecretary at the DOE. He doesn't think that the science is settled. So why not have a conversation about that? I mean, what is the other side? The people who say the science is settled, it's done. If you don't believe that, you're a skeptic, a Luddite. I don't buy that. I don't think there is, I mean, this is America. Have a conversation. Let's come out of the shadows of hiding behind, you know, your political statements, and let's talk about it. What's wrong with that? And I'm full well, you know, I can be convinced, but why not? Let's talk about it. Yes, sir.
Just hold on, just to finish your thought, though. You said that you do believe that climate change is happening, and you do believe that human activity has contributed to it. So the discussion you're asking for is just what to do about it?
Sure. Is that okay? I mean, don't you think we ought to do that?
It's not up to me to say whether it's okay.
Well, why? I mean, you know, you're an American citizen. You ought to have a part in
Secretary,
that.
thank you. You have a lot of energy.
Yes. I come from a place with a lot of energy.
My one question is on U.S.-India energy relations, which Prime Minister Modi had a discussion here with President Trump. Energy was the major discussion and issues, and also, of course, pending civil nuclear energy between the U.S. and India.
Yeah.
So can we talk, sir, where do we stand as far as energy is concerned? Because India is still waiting when the U.S. trucks will move as far as nuclear and clean energy is concerned.
Well, let me address the global issue of the United States and India and the relationship between the Trump administration and the Modi administration. And I happen to think there was a picture yesterday that I happened to see that I thought was very reflective. And it was of these two individuals embracing each other. And I think that was a clear message around the world that the United States and India are going to be substantially closer. Energy is going to play a very, very important role in that. Last night at dinner, we talked about the three areas of which there will be great back and forth, cooperation, deal making, if you will. One of those is in LNG. The other side of that is in clean coal. Thirdly is on the nuclear side. So there is great opportunity for India and the United States to become even stronger allies, stronger partners, energy being the glue that will hold that partnership together for a long, long time. Yes,
Quick
sir.
question, well, two actually.
I knew
First
it
of all,
would be.
those who,
See, our gentleman over here is the only one that had an honest assessment.
I have two for you.
Just kidding.
You had said that it's not binary, that the environment and energy can coexist. But the real question is, as far as fracking and clean coal, there, opponents to that say that, in fact, that it isn't environmentally safe, and that fracking and coal are going to destroy the environment. And I'd like to get your comments on that before the second question.
Coming from a state that probably did as much hydraulic fracking as any other state in the nation, and interestingly, a number of things happened in Texas over the decade plus that I was the governor. One was there were more jobs created in that state than any other. There were 7 million people added to the population rolls while I was governor. There, arguably, economically, the state led the country. There's also a lesser-known story that you probably don't know about, but I'm going to share it with you. And that is that during that period of time, you had this massive job growth. You had this population growth of 7 million. You know what 7 million people is? That's a lot of pickup trucks on highways. That's a lot of non-point source pollution, correct? Your conventional wisdom would tell you, because of where you are geographically, the latitude, that you're prone, because of that big petrochemical manufacturing capacity along the Gulf Coast, to really drive up ozone levels. So there was a lot of reasons that the conventional wisdom would say, you did a really fine job of creating wealth and jobs, but you played hell with the economy, or excuse me, with the environment. And the fact is, we didn't. We drove down nitrogen oxide levels by over 60%, SO2 levels in the mid-50s, and carbon dioxide levels by almost 20% reduction. Isn't that our goal? My point is, Texas, which is 12th largest economy in the world, did exactly what I said. You can have economic growth, and you can have the environment affected in a positive way. It can happen. Okay. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I had a second. Hold on, I had a second question. I wanted to follow up on
I'll
Jeff.
defer if you'll come back to me, sir. Or I'll go ahead if you like.
Come back to you.
All right, but I just wanted to follow up. Thanks. I just want to follow up on Jeff when he was talking about climate change. Just to be straight, you're saying that
Really be straight.
as straight as possible. Climate change is a fact, but you want us to have a discussion about exactly what has to be done about the climate change. It's not up for discussion, that part of it.
I have no idea what you just asked.
I asked you all right, to be as straight as possible. Climate change affected
So
by
I'm going to give
man.
you one more time. You get one more chance to ask this question. Okay?
I'm only speaking English. I can try a different one.
I want you to
All
think
right.
about how you're putting this out here.
I'm putting it out this way. You are saying that climate change, man has affected climate change, and the discussion is about what we do with it, not whether or not we've affected it. So going forward, that's resolved.
No, what I said was, climate's changing, always has. Man at this particular point in time is having effect on it. How much effect is what's at debate here. And more importantly, what is the United States going to do to affect that? Are we going to sign an agreement with somebody that really doesn't call anybody to making any changes? You look at that agreement and what China and what India are required to do, and they're nothing. How many coal plants? 300 plus coal plants we've built in India. So, I mean, why would we sign on to an agreement that is not holding other people to account and asking us to give $3 billion? I mean, that's the first ante. And the Trump administration said that's nonsense. I agree with them, it's nonsense. Now, can we agree that we ought to have a conversation as a people? Intellectually engaged, not screaming at each other and not saying, standing up in the middle of my speeches and saying you're a climate denier, when the fact is, I just want to have a conversation about this.
Isn't that what the scientists have done?
No, they haven't, because when you have a scientist like Steve Koonens that stands up and said the science isn't settled yet, I tend to say, okay, well, let's have a conversation and get these guys together. In my Senate committee, I said, let's have a conversation about blue team, red team, get together and talk this over. Okay, you're up.
If I can, Secretary Perry, thanks for being here. I want to ask you about coal specifically. The EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt earlier this month said, and he appeared to be quoting the Department of Labor statistics. He said very simply, the U.S. has added almost 50,000 jobs in the coal sector. In fact, the coal portion he was referring to since the fourth quarter. In fact, the coal portion itself has only grown 2,400 jobs, and in the last month, it only grew 400. There are only a total of 51,000 coal jobs in this country right now. So is it misleading Americans? Is the administration misleading Americans about where the real job growth is right now in this industry?
I don't think so. And I was governor a long enough period of time that job numbers come and go. They go up and down, back and forth. What this administration wants to do is to send a message across the country and around the world that America is going to use all of its energy resources in a thoughtful, appropriate, and economically feasible way. The coal industry is part of that. When I have conversations with my counterparts in Rome at the G7, when I go to the Clean Coal Ministerial in China at Beijing earlier this month, we talked about coal, and we talked about the opportunity of American coal to be sold globally. So the idea that we're going to be continuing to develop that fossil fuel that's a reality. That's real. We're going to use coal as a producer of energy for years to come. I think the question for us is, are we able to do it in a way that is economically feasible, environmentally sensitive? And I think the answer is yes. Petronova in Houston, a great example of that. So the point is taking that snapshot and saying, okay, this is, a static picture, may be a little bit unfair.
Then following up quickly, if I can, since you get behind the scenes in ways that we don't. During the campaign, you famously said of candidate Trump that his candidacy was a cancer on conservatism.
That has nothing to do with energy today.
But he's been here for 6 months. So what do you make of
Frank.
it? So Secretary, what do you make of it? You get to see
How
him.
are you?
You get to see him in person. What do you
Good to
make
see
of?
you. You asked.
What do you
right
make
here.
of his conservatism? It's a simple question, I think.
Follow me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I thought you were talking to Tom.
Oh, I was just saying
Okay.
hi to Tom. He's just a great American.
So maybe you can help us resolve something. We've questions have been asked here a lot in this briefing. The president himself, during the campaign, called climate change a hoax. Have you had that conversation with him? Do you know if he shares your view that in fact the climate is changing and human activity at this point in time is contributing to that change?
I have not had that conversation with him.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your time. I want to ask you about your concerns about the electrical grid and what you all are doing to ensure not just its safety, but further growth and development. And on gas prices, are you concerned about the direction they're going? Should American people expect gas prices to continue to fall?
So let's get over on the grid. Obviously, the Department of Energy has a both scientific, they have a historic reason to be involved with that. One is that at one of our national labs, we have a test grid of which we are able to go out. One of the reasons that the Department of Homeland Security and DOE is involved with grid security is that DOE operates a substantial grid, a test grid, if you will, where we can go out and actually break things. We can infest it with different viruses and what have you to be able to analyze how we're going to harden our grid so that Americans can know that our country is doing everything that it can to protect, defend this country against either cyber attacks that would affect our electrical security or otherwise. So the ability for us to be able to continue to lead the world. I mean, I think we all know the challenges. I mean, we saw the reports as late as today of what's going on in Ukraine. And so protecting this country, its grid, against not just cyber, but also against physical attacks, against attacks that may come from Mother Nature, weather-related events, all of that is a very important part of what DOE, DHS is doing together. What was your second?
Gas prices?
I'm not in the business of trying to tell people what's going to happen on gas prices. I mean, they may go up, they may go down, just like they've always done. Our job is to make sure that America has a diverse energy portfolio, so that we have as many options as we can have. Whether it's developing, we went and developed huge wind energy portfolio in Texas while I was the governor. One of the reasons we were driven that way was because gas prices went to $12, $13 an MCL. And we had way too much invested, if you will, in just one or two sources of energy, and we thought it made sense to look at these renewables from the standpoint of having diversity in our grid. So that's our job, to try to have as diverse an energy portfolio as we can in this country. The market will manage the cost of gasoline. Supply and demand will work.
On that cyber attack you were talking about, can you give us an update? Do you think that the U.S. energy grid is being targeted with this particular cyber attack? And can you give us an update on U.S. utilities that have been hit?
Listen, I don't have any reason to be different from you that think and know that there are cyber actors out there, cyber terrorists. They may or may not work with nation states. They may be lone type ranger attackers, if you will, that would try to get in to hold countries hostage in some form or fashion. So, whether it's a particular country, I don't have any reason to point at one country and say this one is, we know that they're involved in certain places in the world. They're out there. Instead of worrying about who they are and what's going on, and here in a public setting, doing the work to make sure, as he asked, and he made a point about having the best security that we can, have the best defenses that we can to be able to identify and to protect our grid.
Have U.S. utilities been
Thank
hit?
you. You've mentioned the Paris Climate Agreement a number of times. President Trump said he wanted to get a better deal. Has he or you or anyone in this administration begun that process? And do you think it's possible, given that a number of leaders have said it's a deal that can't be renegotiated?
I'm pretty sure the President of the United States wakes up every day thinking about how to get a better deal in a host of different things. Specifically to that, I've never said, Mr. President, let's talk about what the better deal is. With that said, I don't have a problem whether it was renegotiation of NAFTA, which some of you have been around here long enough to know that I was involved with the original NAFTA negotiations, and I think, renegotiate the deal, get a better one. That's what President Trump does. That's his mindset, and I think our allies and those that may not be our allies need to understand that that's where we're going to be coming from.
On renewables, Mr. Secretary, you mentioned that you did this work in Texas. What do you see as the role you've mentioned at greater length, whether it's fracking or clean coal, as you cited it, or nuclear? Where do you see the role for renewables moving forward from this administration?
I think the renewables are proving themselves to be a valuable part of a diverse portfolio. So I full well expect solar and wind and maybe some forms of energy that we don't even know yet. That and one of our extraordinary national labs is being looked at right now that may give us some potentials that we don't even realize we have. Yes, ma'am. Right in the middle.
Peter's question about jobs, because that's where a lot of the jobs are happening now, especially seeing solar and wind. So do you see this as a growth for the American job market?
Sure.
Sir, I want to go back to a piece that really has not been talked about, the issue of coal. There are some critics who are saying this administration wants to make coal great again. Talk to me about your plans with coal. It is basically being wanted by many countries around the world, and we still have yet to figure out a clean enough use for it as you're dealing with climate change issues.
Well, I'm not sure if I agree with your observation that we haven't figured out a clean use for coal yet from the standpoint. Well, there's some that you can't make it clean enough. So, I guess that's who I'm referencing to. But when you can take 90% and upwards of the CO2 out of the air when you're burning coal, I don't know how high you have to raise the bar to make some people happy. With that said, let me share with you some of the things that we're seeing in our national labs. For instance, being able to coal is the root source of rare earth minerals, and if we hadn't done this work on clean coal technology, we would not have realized that there are ways that we can extract these rare earth minerals out of coal and coal ash. And so, again, I ask people to be open-minded about innovation. You all remember 15 years ago, and we were hearing this fellow travel around the country giving a speech about peak oil. We had found all the oil there was. Sarah, your dad and I went to lots of Republican governors' meetings, and one of them, this guy came and gave the speech, and he said, we've found all the fossil fuels, all the oil and gas has been found, it's a downward slope. That's a fact. Settled science may have been his word. I don't recall that, but he might have said that. That was the point, though, that all the oil and gas had been found. Except George Mitchell didn't read that, didn't believe that. Innovation, technology, drives this country, it always has. And I think we ought to be a little skeptical when somebody says, this is the end of this is bad. It's okay to ask those questions. So my point is that with coal, there may be some uses of coal that we never even dreamed of before that can really make a big difference. Because when you think about the rare earth minerals that are controlled by countries outside of the United States, and our being able to come up with the technology to retrieve those may be a real game changer. So with that,
I have one last question, sir.
Yeah.
You're a former governor, and people are talking about states as it relates to repeal and replace Obamacare. If you had states' rights, sir, thank you.
By and large, I wasn't going to talk about anything outside of energy, but you've touched on one of my favorite subjects,
Well, thank you. And
and that is federalism. And yeah, here we go. You asked, thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
I'm ready
ma'am.
for it, yeah.
So I happen to believe that the states are laboratories of innovation. They're innovators just like we have at our national labs. Governors, I think, have within their states and their bright young people who work with them in the private sector, they will come up with ways to deliver health care that can put more people under coverage for less money and give options to their citizens. I know for a fact that Connecticut is not like Texas. They're just not. And to say that Washington, D.C. can come up with a one-size-fits-all solution to health care that's going to address all of this and do it in an economically feasible, thoughtful way is just so much nonsense. It's just, that's not true. Let the states have this Medicaid opportunity. The ones that want it, if somebody says, oh, I'd rather have Washington take care of me, then that's okay, that's their call. But the states ought to be given the opportunity. And I will suggest to you, you can save substantial amounts of money, come up with options for their citizens that are substantially better for the citizens of their state, and save this country mountains of money.
Mr. Secretary, going back to the threats against the power grid, what about threats of an EMP attack? What are the steps being taken to prevent against that, or to protect against that sort of attack?
I think our national labs are looking at all options, that being one of them.
One quick follow-up on your comments earlier about Westinghouse being a stable and American company. Obviously, it's been owned by Toshiba for more than a decade now, but Westinghouse is in the middle of these bankruptcy proceedings, and several buyers are on the market. You sit on CFIUS. Are you saying that you would block efforts by any foreign company to purchase what remains of Westinghouse Electric?
I know the process, and that is a classified piece of information that I would not give here.
Mr. Secretary, a follow on cybersecurity. Have you been getting reports about a current cyber break-in at a number of U.S. nuclear plants? It's been confirmed by the Grid Monitor. The investigation, I think, is codenamed Nuclear 17. Do you have any information about that?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. This morning, President Macron of France called President Trump and invited him to come to Bastille Day, July 14th. Do you see this as a way that the French are taking up his suggestion for negotiating a new climate change agreement, and would you urge him to make the trip?
I would always look at an invitation to a party as a good thing.
Mr. Secretary, you're very enthusiastic about nuclear power and the potential that it has. A lot of people are still scared of nuclear power because of nuclear waste and nuclear plant safety. And this has been happening since the 60s, when one television documentarian said that really it hasn't changed in terms of what we know to do with nuclear waste, which isn't much. Can you assure the American people that nuclear waste and nuclear plant safety are such that we should expand nuclear power in this country?
You know, I would reflect that or deflect that, if he was here, to President Macron of France, who gets 70+% of their power from nuclear energy. Now, this is the country that wouldn't buy Texas beef for some reason. Yet 76% of their energy comes from nuclear power. So the French, who I've always thought were a little bit, different, and that's in a good way. You know, they recognized us as a state back in the 1830s. So we actually have a really close personal relationship with the French. We like them. We had an embassy in Paris. They had one in Austin. As a matter of fact, it's still there, called the French Legation. Invite all you to come and see it. But the French are a little different when it comes to some things. And one of those, I would find it really interesting that our French friends are very comfortable getting 76% thereabouts of their energy from nuclear, and I can assure you they're very fond of getting it at the rate they're getting it.
Question about Yucca Mountain, please. Yucca Mountain question, please.
One
right over here.
last
Yeah.
question. Oh, I've been so bad to this side. You're it. You're the last question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Secretary, thank you. You mentioned federalism, the power of governors. Recently, as you know, the Trump administration has scrapped the Clean Power Plan, which was hampering many states. Now you've got governors, who you just said have certain authority. You've got governors that are saying, we're going to go ahead and institute the Clean Power Plan in our states anyway, regardless of what the EPA says. Doesn't that put those states at a tremendous economic disadvantage? And what would be your message, sir, to those governors?
I think governors and their citizens need to be given that right to make those decisions. I said many times that I thought that Colorado was wrong in allowing for the use of marijuana, which they've decided to do. But that's their call. I will defend that right robustly. But that ought to be their call. I mean, if they want to put it, I mean, Jerry Brown, we were together in China at Beijing for the Clean Energy Ministerial. We saw each other, shook hands, walked as we were going by. Jerry's decided he wants his state to be involved with the Paris Agreement, however that works, which is fine. That's his call. Texas will still be there to take any businesses that would like to relocate. And that's the beauty of all of this. Allow America to be competitive. Allow Americans to pick and choose where they want to live, under what types of governments, and we'll figure it out. But this idea that we're going to have one size fits all out of Washington, D.C., one of the reasons I came to serve with President Trump was because I knew he believed in that. And he believes in competition. And the future of America is brighter because we have a president who believes in American exceptionalism, America competition, and making America great again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please come back.
Come on back. Yeah.
I don't think anybody will question whether or not Secretary Perry's a high energy guy, that's for sure. Great guy, wrong football team, but that's probably for another day. On top of Energy Week and everything that Secretary Perry and other cabinet members have on the agenda for that, we've got a full schedule of events and actions from the President's cabinet today on everything from global human trafficking to assistance funding for small communities. This morning, Ivanka Trump joined Secretary Tillerson at a State Department event releasing the 2017 Trafficking in Persons Report. As Ivanka said this morning, human trafficking is a human rights issue. that affects millions, and this report is an important tool for the administration to combat this tragic problem. The full report is available on the State Department website. I encourage you guys to take a look. Also this morning, the Department of Veterans Affairs Secretary Shulkin hosted a meeting of robotics experts for a robotics and healthcare roundtable. The VA is embarking on the largest transformation and modernization effort in recent history, and part of that will be developing a robust robotics program within the department. Yesterday, the Interior Department announced a record $464.6 million allocation to help small communities, further demonstrating the Trump administration's commitment to all Americans. In states like Utah, which received nearly $40 million, and Nevada, which received $26.2 million, these investments are an important part of the federal government's role as land manager and neighbor to local communities, including many of those that play a big role in feeding and powering our nation. Many of these small communities in states like Nevada are also being hit particularly hard as healthcare insurance premiums rise and insurers flee their Obamacare exchanges. It's because of the people who will have no choice for themselves or their families that it's so critical that the Senate votes to repeal and replace Obamacare. Every day a new announcement is made that puts health insurance out of reach for thousands of Americans, whether insurers are hiking up rates or leaving markets entirely. Today, the Vice President is on the Hill to attend the Senate policy lunch and hold additional meetings, and he'll be hosting senators at dinner tonight in his residence. Both the President and the Vice President are fully engaged with the Senate and are helping to create a consensus that will push this bill over the finish line. As Sean said yesterday, the President talked extensively with several Republican members over the weekend, including Senators Cruz, Paul, Capito, and Johnson. He spoke to Senator McConnell this morning, and he's invited all Republican senators to the White House later this afternoon to continue these discussions. The President is optimistic that Republicans will live up to the promise that they've been making to the American people for 7 years by repealing and replacing Obamacare. I know you guys are probably a little bit tired since we've been here a while, so do you want to skip on the questions? Figured it was worth a shot, and with that, I'll take your questions. Charlie?
Recently, Breitbart News challenged the accuracy of the CNN story, and afterwards it was retracted, deleted, and the editors responsible were fired, as well as the network apologized for the story. One of the targets of the story accepted the apology. The President went on Twitter this morning and repeated that CNN was fake news. Why isn't their response good enough for the President?
I don't know that it's that the response isn't good enough for the President. I think it's the constant barrage of fake news directed at this President probably that has garnered a lot of his frustration. You point to that report. There are multiple other instances where that outlet that you referenced has been repeatedly wrong and had to point that out or be corrected. There's a video circulating now, whether it's accurate or not. I don't know, but I would encourage everybody in this room and frankly everybody across the country to take a look at it. I think if it is accurate, I think it's a disgrace to all of media, to all of journalism. I think that we have gone to a place where if the media can't be trusted to report the news, then that's a dangerous place for America. And I think if that is the place that certain outlets are going, particularly for the purpose of spiking ratings, and if that's coming directly from the top, I think that's even more scary and certainly more disgraceful. And I hope that that's not the direction we're headed. I hope that outlets that have continued to use either unnamed sources, sometimes stories with no sources at all. We've been going on this Russia-Trump hoax for the better part of a year now with no evidence of anything. Things like the success at the VA barely get covered. They may get covered for an hour at a time, but this story gets covered day in, day out. And I think America is frankly looking for something better. They're looking for something more, and I think they deserve something better from our news media.
Does the President actually expect us not to report on stories of a foreign country trying to influence the presidential election?
I don't think it's that it's expected that you're not to report on, again, actual news if there's something there. But again, I think that there are a lot of things happening in this world that frankly a lot of people would like to hear about, whether it's job growth, whether it's deregulation, whether it's tax reform, healthcare. I think a lot of those things deserve a lot more coverage than they get. And all we're saying is, you know, I think that we should take a really good look at what we are focused on, what we are covering, and making sure that it's actually accurate and it's honest. If we make the slightest mistake, the slightest word is off, it is just an absolute tirade from a lot of people in this room. But news outlets get to go on day after day and cite unnamed sources, use stories without sources, have, you know, you mentioned the Scaramucci story where they had to have reporters resign.
Come on, you're inflaming everybody right here, right now with those words. This administration has done that as well. Why in the name of heavens? Any one of us, right, are replaceable, and any one of us, if we don't get it right, the audience has the opportunity to turn the channel or not read us. You have been elected to serve for 4 years at least. There's no option other than that. We're here to ask you questions.
Right.
You're here to provide the answers. And what you just did is inflammatory to people all over the country who look at it and say, see, once again, the president is right and everybody else out here is fake media. And everybody in this room is only trying to do their job.
Well, I disagree completely. First of all, I think if anything has been inflamed, it's the dishonesty that often takes place by the news media. And I think it is outrageous for you to accuse me of inflaming a story when I was simply trying to respond to his question. Kevin.
Thank you, Sarah. I just rapid fire because I know we've had a bit of a long briefing here. Would it be fair to, let me ask you this way, how would you describe the president's mood on health care? Concerned, still encouraged, and what did you make of the CBO score, if you talked to him about that? And then secondly, I want to ask you about the warning to Syria. What's the message that the administration wants to convey, not just to the world community, but also to the American people who see headlines like that and they wonder, are we hurtling headlong into a major situation in that part of the world?
I'll start with healthcare first. Obviously, we're continuing to be optimistic. The president is committed, as he said, and all the members of the administration have said repeatedly, to repealing and replacing Obamacare, working with the Senate, working with the House, making sure we get the best bill. For us, it's never been about the timeline, but about getting the best piece of legislation that helps the most Americans. And that's what we're continuing to do day in, day out. That's the reason the president has asked members of the Senate to come here today, so that they can talk through that, so that they can figure out the best way to move the ball forward. That's the goal of the meeting this afternoon, and that's the goal of the administration. In terms of the CBO score, as we said yesterday, the CBO is a budget office, and while it does very well at times predicting things on budget, whether it's revenue or spending, I don't think it does a great job, and I think the administration's been clear and consistent that we don't always agree that it does a great job predicting coverage. I think we saw that given their history. They projected that Obamacare, there would be 24 million people that were part of that. There were only 11, and that number is dropping every day. So I don't have a lot of confidence in that number on that part, but I do think that some of the places where they do a good job again are on the budget and the revenue side. And the CBO score that they pointed out was that it would cut deficits by $300 billion and cut taxes by $700 billion. I think those are good things, and I think when they focus on the budget side, that's probably a good thing. And I think you had a second part, sorry.
The warning to Syria, what's your message to the international community and also to the American people who may be concerned when they read a headline like that they're thinking, well, we may be hurtling toward a situation that involves the U.S. in that part of the world?
I think that the message from the statement yesterday was extremely clear. I don't think it was a gray area. It was pretty black and white. Major.
Can you explain, because you went on the record this morning, what the process was that led to that statement last night? Were members of the team at the State Department or the Defense Department taken aback by that statement, or were they fully involved? Can you give us an idea of how the process internally worked to deliberate that statement and then create the statement for public release?
I can tell you that leadership from the State Department, DOD, DNI, the CIA, as well as members of the administration within this building. We're part of that process from the very beginning and fully aware.
Can you give us a timeline from the very beginning? Was that a yesterday or is
I'm
it
not going to walk through the detailed process of a timeline on how that was released for intelligence purposes.
You just said you accept or find valid the CBO numbers on the budget side. Is that
Yeah,
true throughout?
They're a budget.
Yesterday?
They're a budget office, and I think on the initial numbers that we saw from that, the cutting of the deficit, the cutting of taxes, I think that that's where historically they've been more accurate as well. It's not just my, like I've decided that, but historically that's where they've been.
Of the public looking at this, would this administration accept the budget and revenue numbers that were published yesterday as generally speaking valid and worth taking seriously?
I would think so for the most part. I think in large, yes. Jennifer?
Two things, one on Google and one on the economic forecast. So European officials have slapped Google with this $2.7 million fine. Is the White House cool with European regulators hitting a U.S. company with a fine when our own Federal Trade Commission hasn't accused them of anti-competitive behavior?
At this point, I don't have anything for us to weigh in on the regulations of a private company, but if anything changes, I'll let you know. Okay, Kristen?
On the International Monetary Fund, so they lowered their forecast for U.S. Economic growth down to 2.1%, which is lower than what the president has been hoping for. Can you share some reaction on what you think about this new IMF forecast?
I haven't had a chance to dig into that, but we'll certainly circle back with you on it. Jim Stinson?
You called on me, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. Jim, let me take Kristen. I did call on her, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If Syria is poised to launch another chemical weapons attack, isn't that an acknowledgement that the airstrikes in April didn't work, Sarah?
Look, I think that our goal every day is to do what we can to protect life in all forms and to take steps to move the ball forward in defeating ISIS, defeating all efforts of terrorism, and I think the statement yesterday helped do that.
Why will a paper statement work, though, when airstrikes didn't dissuade Bashar al-Assad?
I don't know that it didn't, based on what we know at this point.
And just to follow up very quickly, was there a principals meeting, a deputies meeting before that statement was issued by Sean Spicer last night?
I know that there was a routine meeting that took place yesterday. I don't believe that there was anything beyond that yesterday.
Jim? Sarah, two questions, just like NBC. Given the news about CNN's...
Be careful letting NBC set your standard.
Given the news about CNN's erroneous story about Anthony Scaramucci, does the White House believe there are other Russia-related stories from major outlets that have not been retracted and are just as false, including the February 14th story in the New York Times about collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, which James Comey called into question, which many believe the CNN story was based upon?
I would have to look back at that specific story. There have been many by the New York Times that I would probably disagree quite a bit with. I think you could take it pretty straightforward that this administration disagrees with all of the stories that claim that the president and his campaign colluded with Russia in any capacity. So I think he's been extremely clear that he believes that's a hoax, and certainly something that's not true and didn't take place. And any story related to that, you would, I think, find frustration from this team here.
The CNN retraction, does the White House now believe the news media have an obligation to review stories on the Russian Trump issue and retract questionably sourced stories on the topic?
I'm sorry? I'm not following the...
I believe that the media should go back and look at anonymously sourced stories on Russia and Trump and maybe start a review process and retract where necessary.
I think that'd be a great idea. I certainly don't think that you would get arguments from us if there were retractions from outlets on fake stories, but I also think that there's a moment where we can all do better. And I certainly think that's what we strive to do every day, and hopefully that's the goal. I know it is of many, and hopefully it will continue to be of not just the news media, but everybody involved in the process to continue to do better, to continue to strive for excellence, and to continue to deliver the best we can for the American people.
On your question, Kristen. Okay, so you accept the budgetary calculations of the CBO, but not the projections on how many people would be insured. What about their projections on what would happen to premiums and deductibles? Is that something you accept or not accept?
I mean, I think they said yesterday that the premiums would go down roughly 30% by 2020. That seems, based on what we've done internally, pretty consistent. So.
For people of certain incomes, they would go way up. So you only accept them if they go down.
No, but I think in general and largely they predicted that they'd go down 30% by 2020.
Okay, and then another question. The president promised that his health care plan would not have cuts to Medicaid. Does he believe that a family of four making $60,000 makes too much money to qualify for Medicaid? In other words, that that's just too high an income to be getting Medicaid?
I don't know about a specific level breakdown. And again, there's a reason he's bringing senators over here today to talk through. We know there's going to be changes. We know there's going to be adjustments. The thing that the president was committed to is making sure that anybody that currently receives Medicare, that's not Medicaid, that's not touched. And that is consistent with what's in the bill, and that'll continue to be what he fights for.
Does he believe, he said the House bill was too mean. Does he believe that the Senate bill is less mean, as mean, more mean? Like, what does he think?
I honestly haven't asked him whether or not he thinks the Senate bill, the mood of it yet, but I'll check on that, Mara, and get back to you. Thanks, guys, so much. Have a good day.
You talked about CNN, Sarah. Can I ask you a question? Sarah?
Welcome back. This is Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. We are at the briefing post-show. Quite an interesting briefing. A bunch of contentiousness in this briefing. There was sort of some kind of straight questions and a bunch of contentious questions, especially toward the beginning. Especially toward the beginning of the briefing, where we had a real back and forth, and there was a reporter after the Breitbart reporter, the second reporter, got like really upset with Sarah Sanders, and they had a back and forth. So there was some of that going on. And also, I got to say, the part of the briefing I thought was the most noteworthy, which struck me, was the part toward the beginning when Sarah Sanders she suggested that everybody in the country watch the James O'Keefe Project Veritas CNN video. So, I mean, I know among people who support President Trump and people who follow politics, a lot of them have probably seen that video. But I'm guessing most of the country, I would think more than half the country, is not familiar with James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. So the fact that she got up there during the press conference and gave it a shout out and said, watch it, that's a pretty big deal. And like, that's a big shout out for that video. And a lot more people will watch that video now, I think, because of that. So quite interesting. So this is the Pro Show. We're going to take your comments and your questions. I'd like to hear what did you think about the briefing? What did you think? Give me a shout. You can write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner on Twitter, or email me steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. And thank you to Joe for all your help producing today. Joe helped put all of this together today, so much appreciated. And also just a quick message for those of you who maybe haven't watched this before. We are viewer supported. We give you an alternative to the mainstream media. If you like us, I hope you consider donating, because we need your donations to stay on the air. We are entirely viewer supported. So, we get some money from YouTube revenue and stuff like that, but it's not that much, especially these days with ad revenue. What they're paying out has gone way down over the last year. So we really rely on you for support. So if you'd like us and like to consider donating, we'd appreciate it. You can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate, or you can click on the $sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat room, which is right next to this broadcast. You can click on the $sign at the bottom and donate that way. So thank you for that. Hello for everybody on Facebook and on YouTube. Well, actually, I think just YouTube today watching us. Hello to everybody out there. Thank you to the moderators for moderating. Okay, so I'd love to get your comments. I'd be interested in hearing your take about what did you think about that back and forth between Sarah Sanders and the reporters at the beginning, where Sarah Sanders was suggesting that a lot of reporters publish false stories about the White House and about the administration, and they're not held to account. And then there was some pushback from a couple reporters there saying that the White House has said some false things. So it got pretty intense for a little bit there, but it kind of calmed down nicely toward the end of the briefing. So would like to know what you think. So give me a shout either on Twitter or shoot me an email if you'd like, and let me know what you were thinking. I'm going to just quick and make sure I haven't missed any of your messages yet. Proud American writes, how is CNN even still on the air? That's a message from Proud American. I also found interesting, Secretary of Energy Perry talked for about 40 minutes before Sarah Sanders talked. And you know what? I think there was this interesting thing, I'm sure it's going to get a lot of press, where he said, man is changing the climate, but he said we should have a debate about how much he's changing the climate and what we should do about it. So different people will have different takes on how to interpret that, but I do think certainly he did clearly say man is changing the climate. Now some people might say that's not enough for us. We want a commitment about how much man is changing the climate. But anyways, that was an interesting moment. And also something I personally found interesting is Rick Perry made a case for nuclear power. And you know, I've done some reading on this, and nuclear power is this thing where it is a relatively clean form of energy. And there are people out there who say, you know, if we're looking to clean up our energy and to fight climate change and to have less pollution, we should be looking at more nuclear electricity. But for various reasons in this country and around the world, there hasn't been a lot of progress on nuclear energy, and actually progress is slowing, although in China they're building a ton of nuclear energy plants. But some people think that the U.S. should build more nuclear power plants because that would be a good way to help us reduce our carbon output and reduce pollutants and that stuff. But Rick Perry made it it was very interesting to me. He made a very strong pitch for going more nuclear. And what he said is one point he made I thought was interesting. He said, like, look at France. They are so they have all these environmental regulations. They wouldn't even buy Texas beef, and they're fine with getting, like, I think he said 77% of their electricity from nuclear energy. So that was news to me that the Energy Department and Rick Perry are really pushing this. So I thought that was noteworthy. We'd love to hear your thoughts. This is the post show. We're talking about the press briefing today. Would love to hear your thoughts on the press briefing. So give me a shout. Let me read your comment on the air. I'm at Lookner on Twitter, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. And Bob See Your Uncle writes in, I hate fake news in a time of peace and a time of war. I hate fake news when I hate fake news, and then I hate it some more. So Bob See Your Uncle gave us a little rhyme. Oh, the first part of his rhyme was, I hate fake news in the morning, I hate fake news at night, I hate fake news in the afternoon, it makes me all uptight. So a rhyme courtesy of Bob See Your Uncle. I just want to check. Also, it wasn't as... That press briefing, now that I think about it, wasn't as health bill focused as I thought it would be. And somebody did actually ask about somebody asked about this cyber break-in at nuclear plants, which I hadn't heard about it, but Rick Perry had no comment about that. That was during the Rick Perry segment. Actually, but there were questions. It wasn't just on health bill stuff. I'm just checking my notifications here and my messages. What else came out noteworthy from that? Let me check here. I'd be interested. I would be interested in getting like the view count of the James O'Keefe Project Veritas CNN video and seeing, like, has it in the last 15 minutes just like really spiked. Also, I haven't been watching like the mainstream media. Has Fox, I assume CNN and MSNBC have not reported on the James O'Keefe video. Has Fox talked about it at all? I don't know. So this is, again, the post show for the Sarah Sanders press briefing. It was originally supposed to be Sean Spicer, but from what reports I saw, Sean Spicer was supposedly over at the Capitol doing some lobbying for the health bill. That's what I read about before the briefing. By the way, Rhonda Keller just gave us $2 Canadian. Said, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Rhonda. Those donations, that's what keeps us on the air. We literally could not be on the air without your support. So if you want to donate, you can donate like Rhonda did in the YouTube chat. Click the $ at the bottom of the chat. Or go to rsbn.tv/donate. Or if you're interested in getting free stuff from Right Side, you can make a monthly donation and we give you free stuff in return. That's at our Patreon site. So to find out about that, go to www.patreon.com/rsbn. And I kind of want to, next broadcast, I have a Right Side t-shirt here, and it's so cool. And I wish I had it with me because I would show it to you. Next broadcast, I'll have it here with me so I can show it. I like the Right Side t-shirts for sale so much. I bought one myself, and I like that so much, I bought 2 more. Just yesterday, I purchased 2 more in different colors. So the way to see what the Right Side t-shirts are is you go to tpublic.com. Maybe I can show you on my iPad right now. Go to tpublic, TEEpublic.com, which I'm going to do right now. And then you click on you search for RSBN. Okay, I'll show you the one I got. The first one I got. Then I wore it to work, and Joe liked it so much he ordered one yesterday too. So this is the RSBN. They have RSBN shirts. Can you see that? Yeah, you can. Now, there's tons of colors. I actually am kind of crazy about having really soft t-shirts. So they sell this tri-blend one, which is more expensive, but I really like it. I have expensive t-shirt taste. And by the way, so it's $29 now. I'd say once every 2 weeks they have a sale, so I got mine when it was $22. But the normal t-shirts, which Jake loves, they're $20, and I think they're $14 when they're on sale. But this is the one I got, and I'll show you the color I got. It's oops, if I can actually stay on the page. I messed everything up. I had it all here for you. Let's do this again. Here it is. I got the Navy Heather one. That's Navy Heather. You can't really see it well on the screen. Let me make it bigger. You can't really see it well through my webcam, but I got the Navy Heather one. But the tri-blends are super soft, and there's 3 colors of tri-blends. But they're actually, if you look at the normal t-shirt, which Jake has and really likes, the premium, no, that's not that. The classic t-shirt, there's like a ton of colors of that. So you could even get it in yellow, look. And I'm mentioning this today because we haven't, I forget to mention the t-shirts, and I was just wearing mine yesterday and thinking I like this so much, and I actually ordered a couple more. So we neglect to talk about these things, so if you're interested in the t-shirts, go to tpublic.com, TEEpublic.com. See, it says tpublic right there, tpublic. Let me do this, tpublic. And you can look up RSBN and you'll find it. And another thing, and I'll just quickly show you this. You might wonder, hey, can I just get t-shirts? No, you can get a lot more. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know. It's like we have a new. Wow, there's a new white. I didn't even see this. It's a new white shirt up there. That just went up there. I didn't even know that was there. But let me show you what else you can get. See, normally I'm not doing the broadcast with the camera so close. So look, if you look at the bottom there, you can see there's long sleeve tee, baseball shirt, mug, sticker, kids hoodie, long sleeve shirt, wall art hoodie. Look at the hoodie. There's the hoodie right there. Anyway, sorry to talk about this so much, but I do think it's cool stuff, and we never talk about it because we're always doing so many other things. So today I wanted to bring it up. So tpublic.com, search for RSBN if you want that stuff. You don't have to, but next time I'm on the air, I will show you the shirt that I actually love. Okay, and we're going to be on for a few more minutes here taking your comments about the press briefing. If you have any, I would like to hear what you thought about it. I am at Lookner on Twitter. You can message me here. Let's see. Jay Wilkerson Holmes said, the new Project Veritas video is #1 trending on YouTube. Is that true? Can I find this on my laptop so I could show you? Oh, I know. I forgot. Look, I was totally forgetting that I have a whole other monitor here. So let me see if I can look up YouTube trending and show you. Hold on, everyone. I'm going to try to do this right now. I could have done that with the, I forgot I had another computer here. I could have done it with the t-shirts too. Trending on YouTube. Let's see. Wow. So look at this. Trending on YouTube. Get ready. I'll show you. The #1 trending video on YouTube is now the video for James O'Keefe. How about that? Amazing. So Sarah Sanders, sorry. I'm writing this down. I want to tweet about this later. So Sarah said, it's the video, James O'Keefe Project Veritas video, where they made the video about CNN. It is now the #1 trending video on Twitter. So that's thank you for Jay Wilkerson for giving me the heads up about that. Okay. Bob See Your Uncle says, who was that idiot reporter who went on a tirade when Sarah was at the podium? I don't know who the reporter was who got into that back and forth with Sarah Sanders. I was looking at his name tag and I don't know who it was. If any of you know who it was, feel free to shoot me a message. But I'd be interested in knowing who that was. I just didn't know. It was actually interesting because the first person she called on in the briefing was this guy from Breitbart, and the Breitbart guy was actually giving her some... what's the right word to give her? Giving her some guff. He was complaining a bit, saying like, hey, you don't think we should talk about the Russia story? And that was the Breitbart reporter who was saying that. Okay, I am just checking my notifications here. Proud American says Fox did talk about the fake news story from CNN over the weekend, but not Project Veritas. Thanks, Proud American. Chef Dave says CNN cut the live video feed when it was brought up. Is that true? Because I had CNN on here and I didn't see them. I thought I was watching CNN when they were talking about it. So I don't recall them cutting a feed, Chef Dave, but maybe I'm wrong because I also had our feed up here too. So I'll call your report unconfirmed, Chef Dave. I just checked, Chef Dave, your description, and I was hoping it said what kind of chef you were, but it just says a decent chef developing every day. So I can't say what you cook. While I have a chance, hold on a second. I'm going to do this. Can you guess what I'm going to do right now? Maybe you can. I told you about this one shirt, and I said it's so good, and I said I can't show you because I can't get to it. Well, anyways. Let's see if it looks good here. Nah, I was going to show you on the monitor, but it still doesn't look good. I have to show you in person. All right, we'll stay on a couple more minutes here. We've been covering a bunch today. We were on the air early for the, gosh, I don't even remember. The first thing we covered this morning was we were covering the cyber attack, and then we covered the possible active shooter in Alabama at the military base, and now we've been covering the press briefing. So busy day here at Right Side Broadcasting so far. Who knows what will come next? The floor is open, by the way, if anyone wants to make any comments about the briefing. Haven't gotten many comments about the healthcare bill. What do you think about the health bill being delayed, about the vote being delayed? Would like to know. Give me a shout on Twitter or shoot me an email. Let me know. I'm trying to think of anything else. What else? Anything else that Sarah Sanders mentioned that I thought was particularly noteworthy? And I could be forgetting some things too, so I'm not saying she didn't say any other noteworthy stuff. So she actually went on a little longer than I thought she might, because, you know, Rick Perry was there for about 40 minutes, and I thought it might be really short after him, but she stayed on for a while and answered questions. Dan Canepa just gave 20 euros. Thank you, Dan. He says, all in black. Is this a tribute to Johnny Cash? I'll drink to the man in black. No, it's not a tribute to Johnny Cash, although I do appreciate Johnny Cash's music. Just decided to switch it up a little bit. We did get a number of complaints early on that, like, hey, you'd never wear solid colors. So I got some solid colors, but I hadn't worn the black shirt yet. So try to keep things different here, you know. Glad you liked it. Thank you, Dan, for the donation. That's very kind of you. And donations keep us on the air. I can't stop saying it, because if I stop saying it, then no one will know, and then we'll never get any donations. We'll have to go off the air. So Love your donations, rsbn.tv/donate, or you can click on the $sign in the YouTube chat room. Thanks again to the moderators. Richard Phelan writes in, let's see, this might have been a response to my tweet. I tweeted out that Sarah Sanders encouraged everybody across the country to look at the Project Veritas video. And he said, okay, but we already know CNN is a bag of cats. We need healthcare and tax reform. We are being entertained with all this crap. Not good. So, I do think Richard makes a good point, which is, and I've complained about the news coverage, the last couple months, saying it gets so focused on things like to me, it's been Russia and the Devin Nunes and the Jeff Sessions. Did he lie in the testimony and all this stuff? And it's like in the Comey testimony, and it's just, to me, there's all these issues like health reform and tax reform and stuff like that, which are really important to the country. H-1B visa reform, and just they don't get covered. And I think as a country, I would like the media to focus on it more. I think it's important for them too. I think that stuff is really interesting, and I just think it would be good if those things were dealt with and talked about more. Let's see. Greg Jackson writes in, those in the media at that press conference surely do not like the tables turned. They have no problem attacking this administration, but when confronted, they are highly defensive. How does it feel, media? That's from Greg Jackson. I wanted to show you a tweet I saw that Josh Dawsey posted. I think he's from Politico. He is from Politico. This was an interesting tweet from Josh Dawsey. He says, White House loves this showdown over media coverage in the White House with indignant reporters. So he thinks that in the White House, they think this is a good look for them, having these reporters get mad and having these arguments back and forth about the coverage and honesty and stuff like that. That's from Josh Dawsey from Twitter. I thought that was an interesting tweet. Josh Dawsey from Politico, I'm sorry. This is Right Side Broadcasting. I'll stay on a couple more minutes. I got to eat soon. We've been covering news all morning. So right after this, I'm going to go eat. But if you want to get any last comments, give me a shout on Twitter. Also, I cover a lot of breaking news on Twitter. So if you like breaking news stuff, check out my Twitter feed. Follow it if you'd like. At Lookner, at Lookner. And you can also email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Ronnie Mercer, in response to my tweet that Sarah Sanders told everybody to go look at this Project Veritas CNN video, Ronnie Mercer wrote, I hope they do. CNN is a joke. Bob See Your Uncle says, free Aaron Burnett from CNN hell. Now, what I don't understand, Bob See Your Uncle, is it sounds like you're saying Aaron Burnett wants to get out of there. I have never heard that before. Just check something here. Okay, it looks like people have said what they want to say about this briefing today. Let me show you one more thing before we go off the air. Jim Acosta is still very angry. Jim Acosta's been posting lots of angry tweets about the White House, about their press department lately. So I'll show you the one from today he posted. Oh wow, you'll see a couple. No, here it is. Jim Acosta said, does this feel like America where the White House takes questions from conservatives then openly trashes the news media in the briefing room? So Jim Acosta, once again, not a fan of the White House press department, I forget there's another word I'm not getting right anyways. So I'm not surprised seeing him post something like that because he's been posting something like that every day. Oh, I just want to say one more thing, in case you didn't see this on my on my Twitter feed yesterday. So there's this dude, Brad Jaffe. Brad Jaffe's this guy who I'll show you. I'll just show you who he is. This really drove me bonkers. Oh, so, and he has like, he's a senior producer. I can't even show you on that computer because he blocked me. This is why I'm telling you this. But it so angered me why just the whole, what it was. So here's this dude, Brad Jaffe. Oh, this is what he looks like. You can see I'm blocked. So if you want, look him up yourself. He's a senior producer at NBC. So he's a big NBC News producer. He has like 100,000 followers or something. And he posts negative stuff about Trump all the time. So anyways, yesterday he posted something. Him and a bunch of NBC people were posting this story about Trump, saying that like, it was this thing where like Rachel Maddow had said something about Trump, and I thought they were misinterpreting Rachel Maddow's argument. And they were criticizing they were saying President Trump is partially to blame for perpetuating the Russia story because for encouraging Russia to do their bad stuff during the election because he was using Russian information. But what they would say is like he was using they were saying he was using Russian information by quoting WikiLeaks. And to me, it's like, well, no, when he quoted WikiLeaks, he didn't know that was Russian information. He was just quoting WikiLeaks. And what Rachel Maddow's show, what she originally said was, well, he's helping perpetuate the Russia stuff because he's using Russian fake news stories. So to me, like people like Brad Jaffe at NBC were misinterpreting what Rachel Maddow said and making this just fallacious argument. So what I didn't even troll Brad Jaffe on his Twitter feed. He tweeted about this along with a bunch of NBC people. And for a couple of the NBC people, I quoted their tweet and I said, look, these people at NBC are making this bad argument, and here's why it's bad. So it was nothing personal, and I just said, here's why it's a bad argument. And then he blocked me for that. He blocked me for that. So, and I tweeted out later, I said a lot of these people in the press complain about lack of transparency. They say, oh, the president, the White House press briefings aren't on TV. That's not transparency. The administration should be more transparent. But then you have this senior news producer at MSNBC who's not letting journalists and citizens like you see his feed just because they're people who might question his arguments. Is that transparency? And to me, I got to say, as somebody in the public, I think for anybody in the public sphere, like including journalists, you have a responsibility to keep your feed open. And unless somebody's doing stuff like being a racist or sexually making sexually abusive comments towards you or something just horribly offensive, it's your responsibility to keep your feed public. But man, if all somebody is doing is questioning your argument with a good rational criticism of it, to block them for that's really frightening to me, and it got me really angry. So that really upset me yesterday. Anyways, I hadn't talked about it on the air, so now I have. All right, so I think so Edie Marie Trump sent me something about Breitbart's Charlie Sperling, but that was Charlie Spearing, but Charlie Spearing was not the person who was like kind of yelling at Sarah Sanders. Also, Edie Marie Trump, you keep forwarding me Brad Jaffe's tweets, but as I just said on the air, I can't read them because I can read them under a different account. But he blocked me for the reason I told you yesterday, because I questioned one of his arguments. Anyways, so that's my story about Brad Jaffe. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Right now. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to taking a quick peek at the chat room. Thanks everybody for being in the chat room. Thanks to the moderators who've been in there today working so hard in the chat room. And I'm going to wrap this up, and I thank you for sending in your, during our coverage today, all of your feedback and stuff. Oh, we got a message here from Miss Apropos. She says, Steve, I kind of agree that the White House might enjoy the back and forth. I get mad, but then step back, and if there's a three-ring circus going on, then no one is paying attention to what the president is accomplishing behind the scenes. So you're saying, Miss Apropos, you're a little concerned that if there's this back and forth between the press and the journal and Sarah Sanders or Sean Spicer, it might detract from what the administration is doing and getting publicity for that. And yes. Oh, and also Cyrus Leone, you just tweeted me about this as I reported before. Trump had requested that all the senators, GOP senators, come and meet at the White House at 4 p.m. Eastern, which is very soon. So I don't know if all of them are going, but that reportedly is going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. It's been fun covering the briefing with you today, and what else was I going to say? Yeah, so if there's other breaking news tonight, we will have it for you. And whatever news happens this week, we will be on the air this week. Thank you to those of you who donated. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you, Joe, for helping producing. And follow us at Right Side Broadcasting. Follow us at RSB Network, on Twitter. I'm at Lookner on Twitter. You can follow me there. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on like our videos on YouTube. That helps us. And on Facebook, feel free to share our videos and to follow and like us on Facebook. All of that helps us so much, so we appreciate when you do it. But for now, I am Steve Lookner. I am going to sign off for now, and I'm sure I'll see you soon at some point. But for now, have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.